So, as we begin to talk about, describe, and explain the development of feudalism and manorialism during the Middle Ages, let's begin with a scenario. The scenario is that if you're a peasant living in the Middle Ages and the land of the rich noble, you and your family work hard, and much of the food you grow goes to the noble and his family. Your house is very small, dirt floor. Remember, this is the Middle Ages. There's no modern conveniences or modern amenities. Your house is very small, and your parents are tired, weak, and you wish you could do something to improve your lives. I'm going to. So, what would be ways that you could think about that you would change your life? Well, think about the idea that you might, work your way up, make a deal with the noble, try to buy, make a deal with the noble, try to get a second job, go work for another noble who's going to give you a better deal. Uh, think about some of those things. Think about our free enterprise capitalist system. You don't like your lot. You can go and, in theory, make things better by educating yourself, getting a better job, doing those types of things. Now, granted, there's a lot. We could talk a lot about a socioeconomic structure and economic structure and how people tend to be stuck in the same circumstances because of their circumstance, because of factors beyond their control. But in this case, their factors were totally beyond their control. So as we start describing and explaining the development of feudalism and manorialism during the Middle Ages, I'm going to hide myself here and look at why this system developed. Why did feudalism and manorialism develop during the Middle Ages? So again, after the rule of Charlemagne, where Europe was consolidated for a while, you had violence all around as the Magyars invaded from around modern-day Hungary, Germany, Italy. You had Muslim invaders coming from the south, and the Vikings, the greatest and boldest of the invaders, and you may have heard of them, originating in Scandinavia and ruthless and targeted monasteries, farms, villages. They were usually poor and not defended. So here's some of the invasion routes as you see them, and breaking up Europe. Europe was not a. Let me get back to my face here because I'm going to make this point of emphasis. Europe was not a very consolidated place during this time. Okay, Europe was very separated. It was not a. It's not like that you're thinking of the modern day where you've got strong nations, a union, or even as we'll spend a tremendous amount of time this semester studying Europe, and you're going to learn that Europe was not strong during this time period. There was actually other areas like the Mongols and the Middle East and other areas, the Byzantine Empire, that were much stronger during this time. But so what did Europe do to do this? So the small kingdoms were powerless against these invaders. The invasions were swift, and the kings could not mount a defense. As a result, responsibility for protection fell to these local lords, and they promised to protect the people in their homes. And in return, the people pledged their service and loyalty to this lord. This system was known as feudalism. It was really what it was a way of protection and all in exchange for good labor services. That's why these peasants needed this. They needed this protection. So to mount defense, before invaders were coming, and these local lords provided this. So the manor system starts developing. You've got peasants working the fields, growing vegetables. Remember, we don't have any industry yet. This is an agricultural society. So the village the church built was on a small piece of land. The lord of the manor lived in the large stone house called the manor house. Sheep grazed on grassy fields, etc. So in the manor system, this is where a majority of people lived during the Middle Ages. And Europe, because there were so many wars with all these invaders, this is where these people lived. And powerful lords and ladies built these castles where they could live with their respective staff. And these became known as manors. They were self-sufficient. Everything that was needed was grown there. And you see, the system, the village. They had a church. They had sheep grazing in the field. They had a mill ground it into flour to ground the wheat into flour, etc., to make breads. So everything could be done within the manor. And this was the hub of the feudal system. So life on the Middle Manor, again, very religious. Europe was extremely religious during this time. A daily life of the peasant started in the summer, reaping, cutting off the crops, sowing, plowing, and outside the working hours were long in the summer months. They made some of their own tools. So this was life, and they grew, they had to, in order to eat their own foods, they might grow vegetables in small gardens, but everything, most of what they went to the Lord. Okay, so here let's take a look at the structure of the feudalism, and think about I want you to think about how might our school be structured in terms of who might be the king, who might be the lords, the vassals to the king. Lords and the vassals protected the king and managed the territory. These are small kingdoms now. These aren't big kingdoms. The knights' role was to protect both the king and the lords. This was a system. They paid homage, and what did they get in return? So the fiefs and the peasants got protection from the knights, and protection, and in return, the lords and would offer shelter to the peasants, offer shelter to the knights, but the peasants in return would farm the land, and they would get some food back from the lords, and again, the lords owed their loyalty to a king, and the knights and the peasants owed the same loyalty to that. They would pay rent. Now, this rent wasn't fair per se. It was not a fair system. That rent, they would pay a lot of money, or a lot of, excuse me, not even money. Currency is the wrong word here. They would pay in terms of a portion, a big percentage of their food, and their crop yields in place for shelter, and this shelter wasn't very good. In other words, this system was very, very rigid. They were everybody was stuck in this. If you're a knight, it's probably okay, but if you're not, then it's not a very good system. Let's put it that way. It's not fair to the peasants at the bottom. Kings and lords were very happy because they owed their loyalty to the lord. So when they went to these small wars, the knights would fight for the lords. So again, here are some manorialism questions that I want you to answer on Classroom. Let me get to an example Classroom page. I'm going to put this up as you look at this presentation, and I may also ask a question about feudal society, and what would happen in feudal society, as we go along, in terms of, and I may ask another question about the feudalism and how that also affected mobility, and how that might apply, and what you might apply that to today. So if you're thinking about it, so again, feudalism largely a way for people for the Europeans to protect themselves. And again, what happens is, just as a preview, that we have a very hard time getting out of this system, and that will eventually lead that will eventually lead to a lot of turmoil in Europe as time goes on.